With us now, Ed, what did we see?
We went from the biggest two-day decline on US equity since October 2020 to the biggest one-day jump in the S&P 500 since October of this year. And investors have a lot to take on board, right? Volatility associated with Omicron and what the Fed might do. But if there was a pocket of weakness or underperformance, it was in technology shares. You see that reflected in the NASDAQ 100, a very tech-heavy index, and particularly in the NYSE FANG Plus Index, which was just in positive territory on Thursday. A lot of that, of course, to do with Apple, which we'll come on to. And on a day where we were really in risk-on mode, there was selling in cryptocurrencies pretty much across the board, which was interesting. Some other really important news, of course, came around US-listed Chinese companies. Now, I'm looking at the NASDAQ Golden Dragon Index, which at one point was down by the most since September, but pared back some of those losses to trade at its lowest level since May. Of course, the SEC coming out saying it has a plan to look at these Chinese companies that are listed in America and think about whether they fit the rules, the parameters of what is required to be a foreign company listed in the United States. Of course, we've got to talk about Apple. You talked about it in the intro of the show, notifying, according to sources, its suppliers that demand is disappearing. It's not quite there. And what we saw from some of Apple's key suppliers was it wasn't just Apple under pain, but if you look to some of its suppliers in Asia, for example, LG Innotek. LG Innotek gets more than 50% of its revenue from Apple, and it fell more than 8% in Korean trading. You saw that in Europe as well, of ST Micro and Infineon. So a lot to unpack there, because we went from thinking, oh, well, Apple can't make enough iPhones because of supply constraints, to no one wants to buy them anyway. That's a hard one to follow.
And interesting that they're saying demand is dropping now at a time when you'd think it would be spiking ahead of the holidays. I mean, what does that say about the iPhone?
Yeah, about losing patience, right? You know, I don't know about you. I've been doing some holiday shopping recently. You go onto any website, any e-commerce platform, and you look out of stock. We know from the Adobe data, out of stock messages up 260% from the same period in 2019. So there is evidence to suggest that you're logging on to buy something. It's not there. Don't even try and buy it. Don't wait for it, for sure.
Right. Always get those questions about whether folks buying it should wait or not wait, and, you know, case-by-case basis, right? I want to get to Bloomberg's Mark Gurman now, who's with us and has been reporting on this story. Mark, what can you tell us? Why is demand for the iPhone falling now of all times?
Yeah, I think that this is a combination of factors. One, we have a decrease in consumer spending. We see things like gas and food and other things that you want to buy on a normal basis increasing. People are trying to hold on to their money. We see it's been a while since the last stimulus check. So there are issues here that are preventing people from having that extra cash to buy a new iPhone, right? On top of that, the iPhone 13 is more of a modest upgrade over the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 11. There's not a whole lot of new here, but that was sort of covered up by long lead times, long lines at Apple retail stores, supply chain issues, as well as very aggressive rebates and discount deals from both Apple and the carriers, which made buying these new iPhones, even with minor changes, a lot easier to swallow than in years past.
So why are people holding off buying next year's iPhone? You know, I mean, I'm sure you get the question all the time. Should I wait or should I buy it now?
Right. I mean, I think it always depends, the answer to that question. It depends on who you are, what you need the device for, how old your phone is. There's so many factors. It's not a very black or white answer, right? I think personally, if you have an iPhone 12, there's really little reason to upgrade to the iPhone 13. I personally did it because I got the phone at no cost because of the rebate deals offered between Apple and the carriers. Again, even if you're coming from an iPhone 11, if you didn't think the iPhone 12 was worth the upgrade from the 11, there's really no reason to upgrade from an iPhone 11 to a 13. But if you have an iPhone XS, an iPhone 10 or earlier, I think it's a really solid upgrade for you. I also think there's a lot of people holding off to the iPhone 14. Everyone knows the way these Apple cycles and patterns with device upgrades works. You know that if there's a modest upgrade, the following year is going to be much larger changes. So I think people are holding off for the iPhone 14 as well. There's been a lot of discussion of foldable iPhones. So I think it's a combination of everything going on with the world, as well as this being a modest device upgrade and some of those carrier rebates starting to run out.
What does this mean for the overall Apple earnings and holiday story?
Well, the best thing I can tell you is what Tim Cook has already said. He said they're going to have a year-over-year increase in revenue for Q1. That means they're going to top $111.4 billion. Analysts are looking for numbers around 116 to 117 billion for the quarter. And I think Tim Cook wouldn't have said that number on the fourth quarter earnings call if he wasn't more than confident that this was going to happen. So I think regardless of the demand, regardless of the supply, you have to go with what Tim Cook said he's expecting. And he's expecting growth year over year. At the same time, that growth may not be as big as what Apple expected. They already said $6 billion decline from what they could have made in Q1 is to be expected because of the supply chain issues. Now we know there's some demand that fits into that picture as well as one of the reasons why this quarter may be very strong, but not as strong as it potentially could have been.
Okay, Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, thank you as always. And do not forget, you can subscribe to Mark's weekly Power On newsletter at Bloomberg.com. Now, in other news, U.S. antitrust officials are suing to block NVIDIA's